and you've made a couple of very provocative statements that have to do with the nature of this radically different state power. One, you wrote that not all dictatorships are bad. And another time you said democracy, that's just another word for dictatorship. So these are highly controversial and provocative statements, particularly in this brainwashed society, as to what the nature of what democracy actually means and what it is. So I thought it'd be important to get into why it is necessary to be straight up about this for humanity to get free.
Well, look, once again, it depends on what the content of the dictatorship is. But let's back up a step. First of all, we have to define what is a dictatorship. A dictatorship is not, Nikita Khrushchev pounding his shoe on the table in the UN and saying, we will bury you. That's not a dictatorship. A dictatorship, imagine just one person trying to dictate to all of society with no institutions to back it up and no underlying relations that that's based on. It would be impossible. Just think about it. A dictatorship is dictatorship by a class. It's a dictatorship based on an underlying system, either a capitalist imperialist system of exploitation, or on the other hand, a radically different dictatorship of the socialist system, which is moving to uproot all exploitation and oppression. So they're qualitatively different. I know when we went out to the law school, I think at UCLA, and we, popularized this article that you're referring to, which made this point about what a dictatorship actually is. It's the rule of a class, not of an individual or a small clique of people. And, it rests on a definite underlying system of social and most fundamentally, economic relations. So we went there and one of these law students said, well, you're redefining the definition of what a dictatorship is. Yes, because we're bringing forward the scientific explanation of what a dictatorship is and redefining the unscientific notion that a dictatorship is or could be exercised by just one person or a small group of people with no understanding of the underlying system that they're trying to enforce and what relations that system embodies. So that's the first thing you have to understand. What is a dictatorship? So, and the dictatorship of the proletariat, the exploited class, that's another way of saying socialist state power. Let's demystify. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about state power to enforce the transformations, to be the backing, the institutionalized backing for the transformations that the socialist revolution is all about. Uprooting the oppression of women, uprooting all gender oppression, uprooting the exploitation of people, where some people make money by forcing other people to work for them, uprooting, all the relations among different races and nationalities that are oppressive, that embodies the supremacy of one group over another, and so on and so on. This is what the socialist state power, the dictatorship of the proletariat, is all about. Now, is there democracy under this dictatorship? Yes, there's democracy in a way that, is unimaginable under the current capitalist imperialist system, which is the rule of exploiters. There's the involvement, the increasing involvement, wave after wave, of broad masses of people in actually determining the direction of society on the basis of leadership, which, leads them to transform the oppressive relations that they rose up against to make revolution in the first place. So yes, you need leadership, but there is active involvement. And yes, as I said, there's a lot of dissent, ferment, in the arts, in culture generally, in the, for example, in the Constitution for the New Socialist Republic in North America, it makes the point. It talks about the principle, which is the principle that guides this whole Constitution, and the dictatorship of the proletariat, the socialist state power that it envisions and speaks to, which is solid core with a lot of elasticity based on the solid core. So in the realm of education, for example, it says that the solid core of the educational system in this new social society will be the application of dialectical materialism, the scientific approach to understanding material reality both in nature and in society. It says that will be the solid core, but there will also be the elasticity in the form of allowance for other and opposing viewpoints to be presented in the context of the educational system, and so throughout society, in the realm of culture, in the realm of the media, and so on. This is how, it is envisioned. This is how, what we've come to understand needs to be applied in terms of actually exercising socialist state power, the dictatorship of the proletariat, in a way that increasingly involves the conscious revolutionary activity of the masses of people, and they're thrashing out different ideas and programs and where they'll lead in a living way. So, now to talk about democracy on the other hand, under this system, Mao said, Mao said, sounds religious. But anyway, Mao did say, and he was right. So that's the important point, that democracy is part of the superstructure. What do we mean by that? Well, like you have a house that has a foundation, the walls and the roof are the superstructure over the foundation. So in society, the foundation is the economic system, and the political institutions and processes and the culture are the superstructure that arises on that and then in turn reflects and reinforces it. So the point is that in the superstructure, democracy is part of that superstructure. And what does that mean? It means that the superstructure, again, arises on the basis of and in turn reinforces the underlying foundation, the economic system that is the foundation for the society. So when you have a capitalist economic foundation based on exploitation, the superstructure, in order for the society to function, has to be an expression of and reinforce that underlying system of exploitation. And if it doesn't, then the society will just come completely unraveled and be torn apart. And I've used the example many times, and I think it's a good example, of the right to eat. The laws as well as the politics are part of the superstructure. So let's say you had a law in capitalist society that said people have a right to eat, and let's expand it more broadly. People have a right to all the basic necessities of life. I mean, after all, what can be more fundamental? That you have to, that you can have the basic necessities of life, or that you're denied the basic necessities of life. So let's say you pass a law. Some well-meaning social democrats got in, and they said, let's pass a law that says that everyone has the right to eat. All right, well, now that's a right enshrined in law. So hungry masses who don't have the money to pay for, forget about Whole Foods, what is it? Ralph's Market, from the Big Lebowski, right? Anyway, let's say they go into Ralph's Market, and they go up to the cashier and they got all this food, and the cashier says that'll be $173.28. And they say, I'm sorry, I only have $16. Well, then you have to put some food back. No, I don't, because I have a right to eat. It's written into the law. Now imagine what would happen then. The whole economy would very quickly fall apart, because it takes money to produce all this stuff that's sold in the store. The store has to have a building. It has to have maintenance. It has to pay employees, plus all the other people that had to be paid, and all the structures that had to exist, and the machinery that had to be used to produce the food. And first of all, the farm workers to get it out of the ground and so on, and to plant it. All that is expenses that went into producing all this food. So if people just walk in and say, I have a right enshrined in law, you can't stop me, I'm going to take anything I need out of this store as long as I say it's for my basic needs, you could see how the whole society would come completely unraveled. So, this is one illustration of how the superstructure of politics and laws and so on has to reflect the underlying system. The democracy we have under this system is the democracy of the capitalist system of exploitation. It means that you can exercise rights as long as they stay within the framework of the capitalist system of exploitation. I was just reading that Adam Hochschild, who did the book, on the Congo and Leopold's Ghost, about the horrific plunder and exploitation and murder of masses of people in the Congo under the rule of Belgian imperialism. You might think, little Belgium, they can't do much. They murdered like nearly half the population of the Congo in the 19th and early part of the 20th century. And anyway, Adam Hochschild, who wrote that book, has written a book about World War I. And he brings out how in World War I, once the great Democrat Woodrow Wilson, who was also a vicious racist, by the way, who supported that film, what the hell is that film?
Birth of a Nation.
Birth of a Nation, about glorifying the Ku Klux Klan and presenting black people as depraved animals or out to rape white women all over the place. This Woodrow Wilson and his government passed laws that made it illegal to oppose the war once the U.S. entered World War I, and it made it illegal to criticize the government. This is what this ruling class does when it sees its interests. There wasn't even a war on American soil. It was, remember I think this was a World War I song, wasn't it? Over there, spread the word, the Yanks are coming, et cetera, et cetera. That war was fought over there. It wasn't even fought on American soil, and yet in that context, the true dictatorship of the capitalist class became naked. Often they try to disguise it. Well, you can vote. You're the ones who are actually governing because you can choose who governs you. You can choose between exploiters. Isn't that a great thing? You can choose this group of exploiters or that group of exploiters to rule over you. But then when they saw their interests even challenged a little bit when they went into World War I at the end of the war, after letting all these other powers fight it out for several years, then they cracked down. And the raw hand of dictatorship that is, concealed at times with this outer shell of democracy came, punching through the surface. And so democracy under this system is democracy on the basis of the needs of, the interests of, and ultimately the dictates of the capitalist class. And that's why I say, when we're aiming for communism, we want to get beyond any divisions in society of oppressor and oppressed, exploiters and exploited. So then the whole relations among people are not such that you have to have some institutionalized ways to protect one part of society from another, because there are no exploiters and oppressors ruling over others. So that's a whole longer another discussion. But that's why I say, that democracy, has to be examined in its actual content. What is the content of this democracy? What is it serving? Whose interest is it actually promoting? When the people get drawn into voting for one set of exploiters or another and believing that by doing that they're exercising their power, then that serves the interests of the ruling capitalist class, because people are tailing it. They're just a tail on it, and they're doing everything politically on the terms of it, and they're deluded as to where the real power lies. So this is what's important in terms of understanding the role of democracy. This is a capitalist dictatorship. That World War I experience makes it very clear. But you see it all the time. I mean, why did they murder Fred Hampton in his bed? All this FBI that they're celebrating. I see they got a new show now with a black woman playing a new FBI agent, the secret weapon of the FBI. Upholding this fucking FBI and, an organization of mass repression and murder as some sort of positive thing that, what a, positive institution, and what a great thing that a black woman is the secret weapon of the FBI. I mean, how fucking perverse can you get? But this is, why did the FBI murder Fred Hampton? Because J. Edgar Hoover said the Black Panther Party represents the greatest threat to the internal security of the United States. Fred Hampton was a prominent leader of the Black Panther Party who was attracting a lot of people, not just black people, other people as well, Latinos, white people, Native Americans. He was becoming a figure out there who was boldly saying, by the way, that movie they did about him is not the real picture of Fred Hampton, just to be clear. But he was out there saying, I am a revolutionary, and getting crowds of people to say, I am a revolutionary. Well, that's enough democracy right now. You're dead. We're going to go into your apartment in the middle of the night, 2 or 3 in the morning or whatever, and we're going to shoot you in your bed, and then shoot you again to make sure you're dead. And then say that it's your fault. Lie about what happened, that, you started this gunfight, and all these heroic FBI agents and Chicago pigs and whatever had to defend themselves, which was proven to be a lie, just like they did in Attica. The prisoners rose up in Attica heroically, uniting across lines, divisions that are very hard to overcome, just like the prisoners in Alabama are doing now. They united Puerto Rican and other Latino, black, Native American, and white prisoners. They took guards hostage, but they were very careful not to harm the guards. because they, for one reason, they knew that then that would make it much easier to go after them. So they were very careful about that. And then what happened? The great, mainstream Republican, sort of liberal Republican, Nelson Rockefeller, who was a governor, part of the Rockefeller family of exploiters, sent in the police, the state police, and they went in and they murdered not only dozens of prisoners, but the guards as well, and then tried to claim the prisoners had cut the throat of the guards, which was also disproven. This is the exercise of the actual democracy of this country, which means it's essential dictatorship over people, and whenever they rise up, or whenever, Fred Hampton, I think he first went to jail because he took some ice cream off an ice cream truck and passed it out to the kids in the neighborhood in the middle of summer, and that's how they first got him in jail, and then he was out, on jail, and that's when they murdered him. He wasn't even saying, I'm going to mobilize an army to overthrow this system tomorrow. He was just talking about revolution, and that was recognized as enough of a threat that the facade of democracy, the sham of democracy, fell to the ground, and the naked fist of dictatorship came out and murdered him, just like it did the prisoners in Attica. And you can even go back in the history of this country when people went on strike before the unions were so powerful, and they would murder dozens of people striking, and back in the end of the 19th and into the 20th century. So this is the actual relations of power in this society. It's a dictatorship over those who are exploited and oppressed. It's the rule of the capitalist class over society. And it's very useful for them most of the time to have elections, because that's the way they can involve people in their own oppression. By making them think that by voting for, you see this, I'm pro-choice and I vote. I'm this and that and I vote. Well, you're just voting for people who are oppressing you. That's the nature of democracy under this system. And your rights will always come right up to the point where in any way they're perceived to threaten the system by the powers that be, and then you'll see the naked murderous hand of the dictatorship come out. And the dictatorship of the proletariat socialist state power is radically different from that in the ways that I've discussed.